Good evening, everybody. This is another episode of the Alternative Lifestyle Show. That's just a little bit of music from David Farr from Iran, in fact. And it's an old track, but I always like that one, so I like playing that one. So anyway, welcome everyone to the show. And we've got five guests, because someone has brought two people. So we've got five guests with us today. We've got, first off, there's the post there that I've just put there that tells you, but we've got Hanzik House, Michael, and Kirk from Sandbox. We have got Rob, White Walking Feather, WWF. We have Katie, Plants to Planks, and we have Gregory Patrick, all coming on the show today. So welcome everyone. Thank you for coming along to the show, and yes, I hope you enjoy it. Before I go on, I will read the disclaimer. MSP Waves Radio and its owners take no responsibility for the opinions or statements made by the talk show host, or that's me, or the guests, or my guests. Statements and show topics are not necessarily the beliefs of the radio station. The material on Pensiv's Alternative Lifestyle Show is provided for educational and informational purposes only. So, welcome everybody. My first guest, or guests as I should say, are Michael and Kirk from Sandbox. Good evening, or good afternoon for you, or good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, Pensive.
Hi there. I was trying to remember how far back New York. You're yes, it is evening for you, isn't it? Because it's 11 o'clock for me in the UK, and it must be about 6 o'clock for you, I think, in New York. So
Out here, we're about to head into evening.
Ah, right. So welcome and thank you for coming to the show. And you're I'm just turning you down a little bit because you're a bit higher than me. And you're here because you're going to tell us about Sandbox and about your exhibition that you have going on in New York at the moment, which has been largely funded by Fundition. So we're going to talk about that. And I know, Michael, you're Hanzik House. I'm not actually sure what your Steemit name is, Kirk.
Mine is Voronoi.
Right. Yep. So,
but together we make up the Sandbox team.
Right. Cool. Yeah. So I didn't know. I'd been reading all the other posts, but I didn't know what your Steemit name was. So there we go. That's Sandbox, and that's Michael's profile as well. I'll pop in. I shall find yours in a moment. Yes, so thank you very much for coming on the show. As I say, you founded Sandbox together, I believe, as
That's correct.
Yes, and now it's building into a big community, and it's one of our initiatives on Steam to kind of build communities in a different way as well. So thank you for having us on, Pensive. We're happy to talk about exhibition and also how Fundition helped really make this thing happen.
Yeah, that would be good. I mean, I don't know if first of all each of you could just do a quick intro to sort of who you are, how you got on Steemit, and then from there how you came together to form Sandbox.
So we've been on Steemit for about 2 years now. Kirk Voronoi actually introduced it to me when I moved down to New York at that time. And we both come from architecture backgrounds. We went to school together. We've done a lot of design projects together. And when we learned about Steam, we immediately were drawn into it because we thought this is finally a way that we can support, monetize, value, share, and grow creative content on the internet that we really didn't have the opportunity before. We've used tools like Kickstarter. We've obviously used social media. As we all know, those don't value the work we make on a day-to-day basis the same way Steam does and the way the community does.
Yeah.
We're learning about Steam 2 years ago and kind of testing it out for a while. I don't know if you remember Steam Park.
I did, yes.
We did that project last year, beginning of, to kind of prove to ourselves and the community that we could start to do physical design projects and make public impact with we're in design and architecture, but also that we could use this medium as a way to create more physical engagement around Steam, around blockchain in general, and create some community buzz, because that's what we know from our own industry, and that actually laid the foundation for us starting Sandbox. Because once we realized that there could be a business model behind it, there could be a replicable way that we can help other people to also create these projects in a sustainable way and grow the network.
And so, sorry, I was going to say, was the park was the first project for Sandbox, or the first sort of public project, was it?
First project. Sandbox wasn't even formed at that time. We had an account called Hither Yon, which was our design studio.
Ah, right. Yeah.
And that really was the catalyst for us to create Sandbox, create the incubator program that we have. Our Sandbox is just over a year old, and we're into our second cohort of helping people on the Steam blockchain, understanding the different dApps that are there, and then making their own projects happen.
And that the Steam Park project really became a beacon for us to kind of broadcast out to, the physical neighborhood surrounding in New York, that, Steam is, and cryptocurrency in general is just, it's something that can have physical impact and do within a community. And for us, that was a big beacon that helped us kickstart the Sandbox community and get folks to think similarly about, using cryptocurrency for around the world.
And the when did you actually start Sandbox? Was that sort of as a result of the park project that the idea came for Sandbox from that?
It was literally the week that we had opened the Steam Park project. That was when Sandbox officially started. It was basically right at the tail end of the Steam Park project. We were like, all right, let's roll, let's do this. And that was right, I believe.
Yeah, I think in the middle of preparing for Steam Park, we realized that this could be something we do on a full-time basis. And so we kind of cooked up the idea of Sandbox, different ideas of projects we do in physical spaces, as an online incubator for Steamians, and the park on Sunday. And then we were in the office doing Sandbox for the first time the Monday after.
Monday.
Yeah.
And that was middle of last summer, because I joined last June, and if I recall, the park was something that was just happening around about sort of soon after I started, I think.